Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, hello. My name is Caitlin Elliott, and the last case we talked about was about Jacob Wetterling. And this case, we're going to be talking about I believe it's still unsolved, murder of a young girl that took place back in the 30s. And this is the case of Vera Page. Now, like I said, normally I don't like talking about stuff that happens to kids, but it's these type of cases that get covered up by society, and it's something that needs to be known about, because there are people out there that want to harm your children, and it sucks. Are you farting? I feel like my dog's farting, seriously. I just keep smelling shit. But so yeah, and if you're new to my channel, you've never watched any of my videos before, never even heard of me, you're like, who the fuck is this chick? Who is she? Who is she? Hi, my name is Caitlin Elliott, and I am 24 years old, and I'm very interested in true crime stuff, and I got so interested to the point where I wanted to start my own YouTube channel because of a case that actually happened on the island I live on. I live in Hawaii, so I live on the island of Oahu, and there was actually a case that happened. It was the Ariel Kailua case that happened 45 minutes away from my home, and that got me hooked on wanting to become a true crime YouTuber, because I kept requesting people to cover her case. Cover it, please. It's terrible what happened to her, and nobody would cover it. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna start my own true crime YouTube channel, and so I did. And yeah, most of my cases I tried to cover children cases, mostly because, it's the ones that people are most interested in, and I actually work with children, so it affects me the most. And I also want to give out, I want to cover cases that I can relate to, so I don't seem to, bored with the topics. I can't exactly relate to the Golden State Killer case that I did, but I can relate to the fact that he killed, a lot of women, because I'm a woman myself, and that's something that, is important. And another reason why I like to talk about these cases is because I like to get the word out there, because I feel like sometimes, not enough people know about, what happened to these, people. The people that went missing, or the murders, or anything like that. I did the Ketty murders before. Not a lot of people have even heard of that. A lot of people didn't even know about the Babes in the Woods. I didn't know about that. So I try to cover cases that I feel would be interesting and informative to you guys. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about the murder of Vera Page. That's a beautiful name, Vera. I want to name my kid Vera. So, the case of Vera Page. So, Vera Isabel Minnie Page. She had 3 names. But yeah, Vera Isabel Minnie Page. She was born on April 13th of 1921 in Hammersmith, London. So, this took place back in London. So, this is very far away from where I live. She was the only child of Charles and Isabel Page. I know that makes it 10 times worse, knowing that it was their only child and she ended up getting murdered. Terrible. So she was raised in a working class family. Her father was a painter for the Great Western Railways, and her mother was a housewife, because this was back then, women, they didn't usually work. Their job was to tend to the home and take care of the children. So that's basically how they grew up. And this was also, you have to remember, this was during the 1930s, very early 1930s. This was the Great Depression, and it was very difficult to even find jobs. Sorry, choked on the air. Very difficult to even find jobs, so that's how it was. Then after Vera was born, the family, they ended up moving to Notting Hill, which is a little suburb of London. Again, I've never been to Europe or anything, so please let me know about what's going on, because And it was said that she like had a really nice childhood, despite the fact that she was the only child. She didn't have any siblings, to play with, but she had lots of friends, and she was well taken care of, and she just had a very nice life. So the couple, Charles and Isabel, they decided that they were going to rent out a spare room in that home. And now this was during the early years of the Great Depression, so it wasn't uncommon for people to rent out their house. And it is said that the family did this to make ends meet. Now the people that would go into like these homes, like a lot of people around the world were doing this to make money. And these people that would come into the homes would be called boarders, and they would pay room and board, hence boarders, room and board to the owners of the home. They would pay them maybe $5 a night or whatever, $5 a week, and it would help the families make ends meet so they can take care of their family and help the people living in their home as well. So most of the boarders, they were, as they were called back then, they were mostly family members that they had taken in. They would let in like a grandma or an aunt or an uncle, and they pay them to let them stay in their home, so it was very interesting. So back in January of 1931, so this was when Vera was 9, she wasn't quite 10, and the family had moved to 22 Blindheim Crescent. I don't know how to pronounce any of these words. I'm not familiar with the British and the English, so I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. And at this time, Vera was 9.5 years old, because remember, she wasn't quite 10. Her birthday's in April. So this home was actually much, much larger than the home that they had actually been living in prior. So they only used the bottom floor and the basement because they rented out the top floor to boarders to come into their home. And at this time, it was said that Vera was a very popular and shy but well-behaved young girl. Like, everybody liked Vera. She wasn't one to cause a lot of problems. She would never have her parents, worried about anything that she's ever done. She was just very well respected and well liked and well loved. And I'm sorry I'm losing my voice. This is like the 4th video I've recorded today. I am so sorry. I try to record my videos all at once because I don't want to forget. And yeah, that's how I am. So, on December 14th of 1931, sorry, I'm dyslexic. Vera had decided that she was going to leave her home around 4:30 p.m. and she was going to walk to her Aunt Minnie's house. And it wasn't uncommon back then to walk a lot of places because a lot of people couldn't afford cars. And remember, she's 10, so she couldn't drive anyways. So she was like, okay, I'm going to go walk to my Aunt Minnie's house. And a lot of people back then thought it was going to be safe for her to do that. So she only lived about 50 yards away on 70 Blindheim Crescent. And let's see, where did she live? Oh, she lived on 22 Blindheim Crescent. So she lived on 70 Blindheim Crescent. So she lived on the same street. And Vera was traveling there because she wanted to get her 2 swimming certificates that she had been awarded. They were dropped off at her grandmother's home. So she was like, look, I want to go pick them up. No waiting around. I'm going to go get them. Walking by herself. And about 5:30 p.m., an hour later, Vera was still not home. And her parents assumed that she had just lost track of time and she was just chilling out with her family. She's like, okay, cool. She's not back yet. That's okay. She's just talking to her family. That's fine. Right. So her father, Charles Page, he starts deciding that he's just going to walk over to the aunt's house and go pick up Vera. They assumed that she had just lost track of time and didn't know what time it was, time for dinner, come on home. So he went to go pick her up, and when he arrives there, the Aunt Minnie tells Charles that Vera had actually left because she didn't want to be late for dinner. So she had already left and was walking home. So, yeah, the dad obviously was a little shocked. But I know what you guys are thinking, a 10-year-old little girl shouldn't be walking around by herself. But this was a different time. This was back in the 1930s, the Great Depression. A lot of families couldn't afford a car. A lot of people, you know, they didn't find it unsafe for their children to be walking around by themselves, even if they were 10 years old, you know. They just assumed that it was going to be safe. And I feel so bad for saying that because it wasn't. It was not safe. It was not good. It wasn't. So Charles, obviously he starts getting worked up and he starts panicking. He's frantic and he starts rushing around to the homes with the other family members around them, which how many family members live around them? Like, do they all live on the same street? Like, oh, let's go walk down to Aunt Barb's and then go over here to Cousin Becky. Like, was that common back then to live by your family, like next door? Like, and then next door is your next uncle, and next door, you know what I mean? So he even went to the homes of Vera's friends, hoping that she was there. And out of all the people that he went to ask, like all the family members, all the friends, like everybody he could, nobody had claimed to see Vera. Like, no one has seen Vera since, like, she left. So at 10:25 p.m., Charles Page goes to the police department and he reports his 10-year-old little girl, Vera, missing. And many friends and neighbors heard that she had been missing. And instantly, the neighbors and the friends, they start helping Charles search for Vera. And, which, good for them. That's very respectful. I like that. I like that a lot. So, like I said, many of the friends and neighbors helped Charles search until 2 in the morning the next day on December 15th. And as they were looking, like, Vera was nowhere to be found. So they're just like, I don't know. And the local police and the local media end up getting involved, and they were aware of her disappearance by the night of the 15th of December. And obviously, you know, it's going to be cold, so the neighbors and, like, the dad, they're all frantic, thinking that, you know, like, maybe, you know, she could have frozen to death, you know, something could have happened to her. Like, they were just worried out of their damn minds, which, I mean, I don't blame them. I'd be worried, too. Especially if it's being, like, December and everything. My 10-year-old child went by herself and never came home. Like, a little concerned. So, officers, they come to the house, and whenever they're being told about what happened to Vera, they begin to, like, generate a timeline of what could have happened to her. So, they find out between 5 and 6 p.m., Vera was seen talking to a friend. The two of them ended up being spotted at the corner of Blineham Crescent and Portobello Road. And Vera had told her friend that she was going to go to the store to pick up some soap for a Christmas present for her folks, which I was like, oh my god, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. And this conversation, though, was the last conversation anybody had with Vera when she was alive. Like, that was the very last conversation anybody ever had with her. So, people was searching for, like, as much as they could through the 15th. And it just got to the point where, like, nobody knew where she was. The case was going nowhere. Everyone just got frustrated and they just left it up to the police. Then on December 16th, 1931, there was a local milkman. If you don't know what milkman is, it's like this man who you would pay him money, and he would go around his little, like, car or truck or whatever it may be, and would literally, like, give you milk on your front doorstep. Like, that was back in those type of days. And, you know, that's how a lot of people got their milk back in the 30s, because you couldn't afford to go to the store and pay that much money, or, like, if you're down, like, in the middle of, like, bumfuck nowhere, you know, it's easier to have a truck come and deliver you your milk than you go and drive and waste money in the gas. So people would pay for these services of the milkman to come and drop off their milk. So the milkman, he's minding his own business. He's on a road called Addison Road in Kensington, which is a little suburb again of London in England. And he's just minding his own business, delivering the milk to the homes. And he reaches 89 Addison Road, and he just sits there and just goes, I'm gonna go and deliver my milk. And that's when he finds something that he will never forget. He would never forget for the rest of his life. And what he had found was the body of little 10-year-old Vera Page. And the way that she was, I guess you could say, buried, but she wasn't. She was literally just tossed aside in some bushes. And it looked like the killer hadn't even tried to hide her body, because there was nothing covering her up to keep her, unseen from the outside world, from the public. So this person obviously who did this to her wanted her to be found, having to be like, look what I just did. I killed this little girl. Look what I did. I bet you can't do this. That type of stuff. Want to be show-offy. So police realized that since 89 Addison Road wasn't too far from Vera's family home, it meant that she had been killed very close by her family home. And the police came up with the theory that the abductor lived in the area and knew the neighborhood, which would make sense, would know Vera's route, where she would go, where her how to get to her grandmother's house, would have to have been watching the child and found a perfect opportunity to snatch her and then unfortunately kill her. And it makes sense. It's terrible, but it makes sense. So, and then it's even more possible that the abductor actually even knew Vera and was able to possibly convince her to come with her with this person somewhere, and just ended up killing her. It's terrible. So the police, as they're searching Vera's body, they find a section of an ammonia-stained Band-Aid on the inside of her right arm. And the body wasn't cold yet, but her decomposition was actually farther along than what was expected. So it was really weird, because it meant to the police that she had been in a place that was warm to accelerate the decomposition state. The person wanted her to become skin and bones and just deteriorate so no one would ever find her. And it had rained a lot the night prior, but the police were baffled because Vera's clothing that she had been found in were completely dry. So they were like, how does this make any sense? If she had been buried here and tossed aside, wouldn't she have been wet? If she was killed, the day that she was taken, wouldn't she have been wet from the rain? You know what I'm saying? They were very confused. And the police theorized that Vera, she had been hidden in those bushes for about 2 hours before she had been found. So the person had to have put her there recently, which is actually really scary. So the police, obviously, they find the body and they take it to the local mortician to perform an autopsy on the 10-year-old little girl's body. And it said that they had come up with the theory that that they knew that she had been raped because they found semen in her. She had been strangled to death because she had bruising to her neck right here from what they claim to have been from a ligature. I don't know what a ligature is, but I do know that a ligature for bands, like a clarinet ligature, you put it over top of the mouthpiece and you twist it until it becomes tight enough. So that could be what it means, but they put ligature on her like that, like some type of device like that, and they twist it until it becomes tight enough that she ends up being strangled. And they said that she had been dead for a little more than 24 hours. So she had just recently died. Then they noticed something really peculiar on Vera's body. You know, they were looking at each other like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what is this? And they noticed that she had soot and coal, not soul, soot and coal on her face and melted candle wax on her shoulder, which they were like, how does that make any sense? Like, what is going on here? You know, they were obviously and rightfully confused. I would have been confused too. I don't know what's going on. So the pathologists, they had no idea why Vera had this bandage on her inner elbow. They were like, what's going on here? So it seemed to them, well, it seemed to me personally, that the person that took her must have been like, I feel like they could have been a doctor, because they knew they had ammonia and you had the band-aid. You like, something had to like have happened, like, really. And not only did she have the soot and coal like all over her face, but she had melted candle wax on her shoulder, which doesn't make any sense. And the melted candle wax, they also found that all over her coat, her nice coat. So they were like, oh, what the fuck is going on here? Which honestly, I was like that too. I was like, what? So, like I said, they had no idea why she had the bandage on her elbow. They're like, oh, what the fuck? So the police discovered that the attacker was the one wearing the bandage, and it had actually come off in the attack. The attack was so brutal and so forceful that the band-aid came off of the attacker and went onto Vera. Like, that's just terrible. So the day after Vera was found, a woman actually went to the police station, and she claimed that she had found a red beret at 9:30 p.m. the previous night, on her property. And she was like super confused. She was like, why the fuck do I have this beret on there? And so it turns out, like, police got in contact with Vera's family. They were like, have you ever seen this beret before? Like, does this look familiar to you? And her family was like, yes, that beret is Vera's. So that's like a big shocker right there. They found Vera's beret. So, damn. Then on December 21st of 1931, the police, they got another witness that came forward and said they knew some information about what happened to her. What happened to Vera. And so, Riley!
Your host is being barky. Hey.
Oh, thank you. My husband brought me berries. How sweet of him.
Okay, have fun.
Thank you. So, on December 21st of 1931, the police, they ended up getting another witness who came forward and said that they had information about what happened to Vera. Then he said he owned a coal shed. And he was like, and it was very peculiar because he was like, well, I locked the coal shed, but I went out and I found that it was unlocked and wide open. He was like, yeah, what the fuck is going on here? Like, what is happening? So he was very confused because every other day the shed was always locked. And the shed was actually very close to Addison Road, where Vera went missing. I mean, bananas and strawberries, man. Time of my life. So the police also then found out that the coal shed had no electricity, which could explain why there was wax on Vera's coat, because you had to have a candle to see everything. And it was said that Vera was stored here until the killer relocated her body. That was able to keep it preserved so it wouldn't be decomposed so fast, because in a coal shed, it's usually very, very cold. So the police, they ended up interviewing a man named Percy Rush. And I'm gonna eat another banana. Now, Percy Rush, he was actually 41 at the time of Vera's murder, and his parents actually lived in the apartment building above Vera's at 22 Blindham Crescent. And Percy, he only lived a short walk away, so he knew Vera. And he worked as a flannel washer. I'm not 100%, like, they washed the shirts and stuff, like a laundromat, I guess, kind of, but like he did personally. I'm not 100% sure. But he never denied the fact that he knew Vera. He's like, yeah, I knew her. But he claimed he hadn't seen Vera for 3 weeks. And then, however, get this shit, he did have a cut on his finger, and he did work with ammonia, which explained the Band-Aid that was off of her, which he could have had on his finger, and the ammonia that she was around. So, obviously, Percy became the prime suspect of the whole case. I mean, obviously. I mean, all the details are pointing to him. He's like, yeah, candle wax and everything. So, he always claimed he was innocent. He was like, why the fuck would I do this? And he had told police he had actually injured his hand a week prior to the disappearance. He said, it wasn't me, I injured my hand a week ago, like, this type of stuff happens, it wasn't me, I would never do this, blah, blah, blah. So, he had a section of a bandage and a red tablecloth, which was some of the stuff that Vera was wrapped up in. Then, he even had a candle that had the same wax that was on Vera's coat, coincidentally. Go. And get this, this shit pissed me off. Remember how they said that Vera was raped? Get this, so his coat had the wax on it. Oh, Riley, what's wrong? And they had traces of coal dust on it. And he had traces of his own semen on it. However, Dr. Rocky Lynch, he claimed that the bandage was different than what was at Percy's house. Like, no, that's not his. That's not his bandage. It wasn't him who did it. It was different. It was completely different. In conclusion, on February 10th of 1932, there was a coroner's inquest. The coroner's inquest, normally it is a coroner's request, an inquest regarding the death of an individual who was just killed or died suddenly under mysterious and suspicious circumstances, hence what they thought happened to Vera. Percy said that he and his wife were absent, from their home the night of the murder because they had gone shopping in Kensington, so they're like, there's no way it was me. There's no way it was me, And he said he did not visit his parents that day, which is what he had originally had said. The shed was even said to have not been broken into because the owner had taken the lock. Which means anyone could have accessed the freaking shed. Anyone could. Anybody, because it wasn't locked. It was wide open for anyone to go into. So this allowed the charges against Percy to be dropped. And nobody had ever ended up being charged with the murder of Vera Page because of, all that. Ain't that some shit? This case had me so pissed off. What? No, you cannot have mommy's bananas. It had me so pissed off because I was like, it's so obvious who it was. Like, if only they had DNA back in the 30s, they could have easily have caught this guy, by the sperm or whatever. And I personally believe that, obviously, Percy Rush was behind the kidnapping and the murder of Vera Page. I mean, all the evidence points to him. I mean, we're talking about the candle wax on his jacket. What's wrong, Bubba? The candle wax, the soot on his clothes, which was coincidentally what Vera had all over her coat, was candle wax and soot. Explain that. And it doesn't make any sense to me why he wasn't charged with anything. What's wrong? Why he wasn't charged with anything. Because he had so many signs point to him that he was a killer. And I personally feel bad for Vera's family because that was their only child and she ended up getting murdered. And it pisses me off because they thought it was going to be safe for her to walk over to her grandmother's house. And it wasn't. What is wrong? What? It also makes me think that she had been stalked and someone had been watching her to look for the perfect opportunity to snatch her up and abduct her, rape her, and then strangle her to death. Because I feel like this is what had happened in that order, that she was kidnapped, maybe like lured away by someone. She was abducted, held somewhere, raped constantly, and then strangled to death, and then put her body into that soot thing to keep it cold so it wouldn't decompose. So that is my thoughts and my theories on it. I would love to know what you think about this case, and that is also the terrible case of Vera Page. I'm so sorry for anyone who had to hear about this, because it does have to involve crimes against a child, and yeah, so it was very heavy stuff. And I hope to talk to you guys in my next video. Bye, see you later.